My name's Meghan Bates. I am the Senior Community Strategist at Hivebrite. We wanted to start this session out with a little bit of intention. So I love always asking, what's your why? You know, what's your why for doing community? I believe, personally for me, my personal why in community is making sure there's a very diverse discussion around what community building should look like. So whereas sometimes, you know, you ever look at something and someone's like, oh, well, the sky's blue. And it's like, no, it's cerulean or it's aquamarine or something of that nature. I believe there's such a nature for coloring community and the community discussion in that way. And that requires having diverse speakers in the room. So really happy to be with you guys today. Before we begin, I know we'll get started with the Obama Foundation. We wanted to give you guys a little opportunity, so just a light woo if you can. Anyone who is on maybe less than 2 years of community building, give us a woo. You can do better than that, give us a woo. It makes us excited, it warms us up a little bit. Anyone who is 2 years or more in community building, woo. Yeah, very nice, glad to have you. Anyone who traveled internationally, I've spoken to several of you today. Yeah, very nice. Hope you're not jet lagged. Any of you from Texas? As a 5th-gen Texan, thank you so much. All right, so from here, let's just get started. So Nada, tell us a little bit about you and the Obama Foundation.
Yeah, of course. So first, just a big thank you to CMX, and thank you to Hivebrite for having me today. This is my first CMX summit, and I love being with my people, and I hope you all feel the same. So yeah, more woos. Let's do it. And speaking of my people, I think one of the offerings that I can make on the stage today is the perspective of a nonprofit community builder. So any of my fellow nonprofit people? Okay, nice. We are well represented. Let me also ask, before I start, how many of you, maybe by a show of hands, or woos, let's stick with woos, how many of you think that your community right now is having a positive social impact? I feel like if you were listening to the last talk, you should all be saying woo, absolutely. And finally, how many of you are eager to increase the social impact of your community? Okay, good. Well, then I'm really happy to speak with you today. So I hope to support you on that journey. So real quick, my name is Nada, and I have the real privilege to lead something called the Obama Leadership Network. Same Obamas, the ones that you're thinking of. We'll get to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But basically, I've been doing community building in different ways for over 15 years. Most of that has actually been in person with a background in community organizing, but then I've also transitioned into online community work over the last 5 years. So I hope that that perspective will be really useful for our conversation today. So first off, the Obama Foundation is a nonprofit to really support the next generation of leaders who follow the legacy of President Obama and Mrs. Obama. We like to call them values-based leaders, because no matter what sector you work in and no matter what social issues you care about, it's not just what you do, but how you lead that really matters. And so we have this enormously beautiful community of people, like one of our leaders who is one of the youngest members of the EU Parliament right now, representing Germany. We have another leader, for example, who is helping immigrant entrepreneurs through incubators in Australia. We have another leader who is promoting literacy across South Africa, and other leaders who are promoting democracy and human rights in many different ways. So there's a hugely diverse community. And since we started running leadership programs back in 2018, we've already graduated more than 1,000 of these Obama leaders who are in almost 150 countries. So that is our community. That's the Obama Leadership Network. And I had the privilege to lead our team last year in launching this program and this online platform to really help them be a lifelong community of support. Because again, no matter where you are, it is hard to actually be a really good leader in the world today, but it's a lot easier and a lot more fun when we can do it together and know that we're not alone. When these leaders graduate from their programs, they report having like a transformational, life-changing experience. So shout out to my colleagues who make that happen. And then they graduate into this alumni community called the Obama Leadership Network. And early last year, we launched our online platform, powered by Hivebrite, to really give them a home, right? And to make it easy for them to really connect and support each other in meaningful ways.
So Netta, could you actually, so thinking about your community, it's started remotely or just offline and came into this online space. So that's been the transition, would you say?
Yeah, exactly. So it's interesting because we have a mix of leadership programs that are mostly virtual and some that are also in person. So folks do have a different experience, but again, consistently report just that they built confidence, they built credibility, through becoming named as an Obama leader, and they built all these amazing connections. So I do recognize that part of the amazing online engagement we have is attributed to the ways that they were connecting before they became alumni in the community. So for example, when we launched our Hivebrite platform early last year, we had like a 60% new user adoption rate within a month, or yeah, something just pretty unheard of, which was amazing, right? And especially if you consider that a lot of these leaders had done programs in 2018, 2019. There was never a dedicated team to stay in touch with them. So that just was such a strong sign that there was a huge appetite to connect. So again, that makes the work easier. But as you all know, it's not just about getting people to adopt new tools and new routines. It's about maintaining their engagement and deepening it. And so a couple quick lessons I think that we've learned in our first year of this online community. Number one, to really make it as easy as possible for your users to be the best possible ambassadors for your mission and for your work. I know that sounds simple, and you've probably heard it in a lot of community building books, but it was just instrumental in getting us to the point of engagement that we have now.
Could I ask you a little bit about that? So when it comes to like the demographics, are you working with younger? Are you working with older folks? Are you working in global kind of settings?
Yes.
What is
Yeah,
that like?
great question. So it's funny because we talk about like the next generation, but really we're already engaging multiple generations. And the average member of our community is like mid-30s. They have maybe 10 to 15 years of experience in their work. They definitely have a proven track record of social impact, but they're also looking to grow and pivot in different ways. And actually, the African continent has the largest percentage of leaders in our network right now, about 40%, followed by, yes, woo, more woos, followed by the Asia-Pacific region. Okay, all right. And then the United States and Europe after that. So yeah, again, it's super diverse. We have leaders in all sectors, right? Again, politicians, public servants, activists, business leaders. But they really share this model of leadership and shared values that I'd love to talk more about as we continue to discuss this work to come.
That's awesome. And just a reminder to all of you, there is opportunity for Q&A, so feel free to text your questions or we'll respond to those in a moment.
Can I add, actually, so one more just quick lesson to start with
Yeah.
about high engagement that we've seen. This is a principle that I learned in IRL, like in real life community building, but I think translates really well online, which is to really make the moment count. I think all of us are seeing more and more that our people are kind of streaming multiple communities at the same time, to use language from my friend Casper Turkile, who's written awesome stuff about community as well. People are really busy, people are hyper connected, but also lonely. So just really make the moment count. I think that we can't overstate the importance of that. And it's something that we do in our in-person global events. For example, I just came back from the UK where we had a global meetup to take 20 Obama leaders from strangers to family in the course of a few days, which is so fun and beautiful. But I really think we can do similar work online as well and really expedite that process of deep belonging and connection.
Awesome, awesome. So I know we've kind of gotten very high level what the Obama Foundation looks like, but I'm going to ask the million-dollar question everyone wants to know. Have you met the Obamas or anyone remotely like the Obamas?
Yes, so I've been with this job for about a year and a half. Again, it's an enormous privilege. And first of all, our founders or principals, they're really engaged. Keep in mind, they're amazing human beings and leaders. They're also pretty young, so they keep their people busy. And I've had the privilege to interact with both President and Mrs. Obama in person and online a number of times. I'm also totally accustomed to disappointing people when I come on stage and they heard like Obama's and then they see me. It's all good. I'm not offended. But honestly, what I love to tell like friends and colleagues when they ask about this is that I've seen them operate up close and personal, and the model of leadership and character is authentic. And it just really amazes me that, you know, to have been like among the most influential people on earth and still not think that you are above the people around you and doing a small job that needs to get done for a group. Like, I've seen these unscripted moments, and it's really beautiful. I'll give you one quick example where last year, Mrs. Obama did a trip to a few African countries with her friends Emil Clooney and Melinda Gates.
Just casually.
You know, casual. They're doing amazing work to collaborate on providing opportunity for girls around the world. So we were planning this trip for Mrs. Obama, and we actually have a lot of Obama leaders in South Africa, where, you know, she was visiting. So we had basically planned to do a photo op with some of these local young leaders and Michelle Obama. And during the planning meeting on Zoom, you know, we were going through the agenda, and she was like, wait a minute. Like, you're telling me that South Africa has some of the largest number of Obama leaders. I don't want to do a photo op. I want to listen to them. I want to sit, you know, I want them to know how important they are to us. And I want to learn from what they're experiencing and how they're supporting each other. So that was just such a beautiful moment. And you can probably see some photos on Twitter somewhere of the roundtable that we ended up doing with her and her team. And it was just such a beautiful experience.
That's awesome. So everyone, we are 1 degree removed from President Obama and his family. So if you have any questions later,
I can text them. No, we don't actually do that, but I like to
text your curbside order to the Obamas later through Nada.
And I will say too, because we were talking about this backstage, you know, it's pretty cool to like be in the orbit of really amazing humans. I mentioned a few others, but one other special moment I've had in this job was that we launched a virtual event series last year to hear from inspiring leaders, again, who follow this model of values-based leadership. We had an online conversation with Jacinda Ardern, former Prime Minister of New Zealand, and Ben Rhodes, President Obama's longtime advisor and speechwriter, who is still really active in this work. And at the end of the conversation with all of these global leaders in our network, Jacinda herself, Dame Jacinda, was like, this was amazing. It was like taking a tour of the world over Zoom. And so again, I just feel really humbled to be in a position of uplifting leaders to connect each other, who are also then inspiring their own mentors and amazing leaders like Jacinda Ardern, who have already had such a huge impact on the world, to really be, you know, idealists, but also pragmatists, and to be courageous, to have hope in dark times, and, you know, to do the long, hard work of good leadership that is really responsive to communities.
So, Nada, I'm hearing a lot of, you know, it's about being pragmatic when you're building community. So could you share a little bit? Obviously, this is a very global community. There's a lot of different values and beliefs in the room. So how are you guys building a space that is conducive to a very diverse group of people who are community building online? What does that look like?
Yeah, thank you so much, Megan, for the connection, or for the question, because I think anyone who is building any form of community online should think about a global audience by default, right? Like, the world is hyper-connected. This is one of the ways that things look differently now from when the CMX Summit started 10 years ago. So even if the primary members of your community are Americans or a local audience, like, really try to think about that global audience by default, because you are probably reaching more people than you even realize. And so in order to do that really well, it's important that we acknowledge, right, that different languages, different cultures affect how people engage and how they feel about their belonging to others. A quick example is that, you know, I was feeling pretty overwhelmed when I took this role and knew that we would be communicating on a regular basis to, again, such an enormously global audience. So, but I think we can, you know, relieve ourselves of the pressure to be experts in every culture, in every language, in every context, but still increase our global competencies. There's a great book, for example, called The Culture Map by Erin Meyer, which I read last year and shared with my team, because it just gives you like really practical frameworks that acknowledge how different cultures have different communication patterns, and they have different understandings of leadership and hierarchy. They have different understandings even of time and prompt, timeliness. So speaking as someone whose family comes from Egypt, like, I really appreciate the acknowledgement that, yeah, certain cultures are more punctual than others. And that actually has to do a lot with how people view relationships in society. So there's all this nuance, but again, I think with small steps, we can all be building our cultural competencies to make it easier for more members of different backgrounds to participate and feel connected.
So it sounds like obviously there's like a technological, like I imagine making my dad a leader in the Obama Foundation's community. I've obviously got to train him on the tech stuff, but you'd say most of that is global based first, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. And a lot of it for me comes down to language. Even though English is the exclusive language that we use in our leadership programs and so in our network as well, we still, for example, we're really mindful of idioms, right? And different expressions that might be Americanisms that we're not really thinking about when we talk to our colleagues in DC or Chicago, but we need to be mindful of when we're speaking to this global audience.
Beautiful. That's awesome. What has been the most, I guess, the most memorable experience that you've had leading with the Obama Foundation?
Yeah, I'm just gonna politely not answer that question because it's too hard.
So many, I'm sure.
No, but I will give you a few nuggets. And a lot of it, again, has to do with the fact that even though we have these profoundly inspiring founders, I am constantly inspired by the young leaders themselves who are members of this community. I hope you all take the time to really listen to and connect with members of your community to recharge yourself, right? And fill your tank so that you can keep doing this work as best as possible. I'll give you a really quick example. There's so many leaders who I have spent countless hours with online, who I've then had the chance to meet with in person at one of our global events. One of whom, for example, is just this brilliant, courageous activist in Uganda who's been working with victims of sex trafficking and human trafficking and has been targeted, right, for her work. She basically has just had to leave the country because it's too dangerous. And so she was part of a reunion, a small reunion that we had for African leaders recently. And I had seen her again online, in Zoom, in our Hivebrite platform. But during that event, she just expressed to us how grateful she was for being in community with people during such a profoundly difficult moment of life and leadership, where she was getting threats, her family was getting threats. She's had to uproot herself completely, but she's able to double down on her commitment to her work because she knows she's not alone. And so again, I think this is the power and spirit of what we all do in different ways. As others on the stage have said, it's actually kind of spiritual work. It is work that requires our whole selves. And so the more we take care of ourselves as community leaders and builders, the more we can create those spaces for others.
Say more. I want to hear a little bit more about that, because I know as someone who's built community for the entirety of my career, it's hard. And if you've ever community managed over the holidays, you get it, like being in a forum, typing out things to folks. So what does it look like to actually make that space and take some time away from the community, come back in refreshed?
Yeah, of course. So I did want to share a couple bits of advice that I found really useful in my community building career related to this. So the first one is so simple, but I really urge all of you to consider documenting one personally meaningful moment in each of your days. Because a lot of the beauty of this work is the accumulation of many, many personal moments, right? It could be how someone responded to something that you offered. It could be seeing the fruit of your labor of an introduction that you made, 2 years later, and learning about how these people are working together. But this is also something that I do in my personal life with a 1 line a day journal. I don't know if anyone's heard of this. My whole life I had wanted to be someone who journals, and it was just too hard, right? But I had learned about atomic habits and kind of making things easy. And I'm now on my 3rd year of my 1 line a day journal. I've missed some days, but for the most part, I have this beautiful resource to help me keep growing in my life and my leadership. And it literally is just coming down to a simple moment of joy, a simple moment of gratitude, of human connection. That's like the most beautiful thing I can document for myself that keeps me motivated and going. So I really encourage you all to, just explore like just moments, right? We are all a mosaic of moments of human connection with others. So take the time to document those moments so you can remember them, to energize yourself when the work gets tough and the hours are long and the jet lag is real and the world is on fire. Like it's a lot, right? But I really have found like so much richness from making time and space for myself to do that.
That's awesome. Heavy on the jet lag for sure.
Yes.
I've also seen, I love that you mentioned like taking one thing a day, one positive thing, because that's something that can be built into communities, right? Like we can give our users the opportunity to post like one thing a day or one thing a week that was really meaningful to them. So really awesome. If you're okay, I'm going to take some of the questions or take one of the questions and then we'll come back. But someone has asked, can you speak to how you leverage the platform or any other tools to engage your community? So what kinds of tools, what kinds of features are you using in your community?
Yeah, for sure. So thank you for the question. So the quick context for my answer is that when I stepped into my role, no one had ever been hired before by the Obama Foundation to, again, formalize this network and stay connected with these leaders. So my first couple months, I just did a big listening tour, because by that point, we already had hundreds and hundreds of alumni from our programs. And the number one pain point that I heard from our people was so simple, right? But it was literally like, I know in theory that I'm part of a global community, but I literally can't access those people. Like if I'm, let's say, an Obama leader from Chicago 2019, I hear about an amazing Obama leader from, Thailand who's working on similar issues, 2023 cohort. There was literally no way to find each other. If you were lucky, maybe you had a personal relationship with a staff person who maybe had a personal relationship with someone else to get to that point. So I just give you that context because once we launched our Hivebrite community, from like instantaneously, the directory became so powerful. And it's literally our primary database as staff for the foundation, but also for leaders to find each other. All the time we see people posting when they travel for conferences or for personal reasons, and then sharing photos of meetups because they can literally find each other now. So it's just been such a powerful feature of our online community that we literally use on a daily basis to help identify leaders for special opportunities and connect them to each other in all kinds of ways. Yeah.
And remind me again how old the community is.
Yeah, so again, there's been Obama alumni of our programs since 2018, but the network didn't really start until last year, January of last year.
So even within this last year, just having some form of like a hub for everyone to go to has created some impact over time.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm not sure if others can relate to this, but before our platform, we were manually as staff trying to maintain a database of who our people were, where they were moving to, what new jobs they were taking. It was so profoundly inefficient. And now we have access to that information because it's in the hands of our users. They keep us up to date about their profile, their travels, their achievements. And then there's visibility into one another, right? So they can build each other up and celebrate moments together and work through challenges together. So we also use the groups feature quite a lot to really help give people dedicated space to collaborate on issues like climate change, democracy, and other topics as well.
So taking everyone out of an Excel spreadsheet maybe and
yes,
putting
quite literally. I started my job, I got a spreadsheet, right? That was about it.
Love that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Nada, so I know one thing that we really value at Hivebrite is about impact. So it's great to lead a community, but it's also so important to establish and continue to reiterate what the impact of your community is. So if I could ask you, as I ask most of our clients, so because of this community, what are you seeing as the impact overall, like globally?
Yeah, of course. So there's definitely been impacts that I've experienced personally and that I can see in a number of different ways. So first, on a really practical level, because the Obama Leadership Network exists, I am now a master of time zone conversion, for example. I don't know if anyone else has that skill. And now, having heard a previous panel, I just want to use AI from now on to do these things. But you know, there's definitely, again, like kind of increased global competency, cultural competency that I've invested in, and I'm really proud of at this point in my career to keep growing and being impacted by. And then, of course, at the same time, like because of the Obama Leadership Network, I have genuine hope for the future because I can see how every single day these profoundly diverse, motivated young people are working together to respond to the greatest issues of our time. I know that sounds really like lofty, but it really is true. And I love to remind people that hope is a verb. And, you know, President Obama himself will joke sometimes about how he's the hopey, changey guy. Like, he knows that's part of his brand. But I really believe that it's actually courageous to find reasons to be genuinely hopeful about the future in really dark times for the world. And again, like we are just so privileged to be able to see this every day on our platform, in the relationships that we're cultivating in person, online, through the Obama Leadership Network. So I like want to share that gift with all of you today because I can see it up close, and it's beautiful. And we all have a role to play, right, for building that brighter future. But I really am so grateful that, again, we've been able to, like, with a couple powerful tools and a couple good practices, you know, put into practice something that is so transformational.
The idea of hope as a verb is what I'm taking away from that. And someone has asked in the Q&A, what specific ways do you help members form meaningful relationships? So if hope is a verb, what are the things that you guys are doing on a weekly or a monthly basis to create specific action with your users?
Yeah, I love this question. So there's a couple key components to our community building strategy. One, which I hope will resonate with at least some of you, is to really uplift our super users, our ambassadors, our champions in a very intentional and consistent way. So my personal theory, and I would love to hear from others who may have thoughts, you know, my theory, at least in our current community, is that the top 5%, you can say 1%, whatever, but I think in our case, top 5% of our members are the force multipliers who are they're leaders amongst leaders in our case. They're bringing other people along into this journey with them. They're not just like self-promoting and talking about their achievements. They're really intrinsically motivated, right? For whatever reason, this moment in their life and in their leadership journey is a meaningful one for them to build each other up, right? And bring others along.
So you're spending more time focusing on this active user group
Yes.
versus those who may be what we would call learning or just kind of gradually coming in and leaving the community.
Exactly. Yeah, I always tell my team, like, a big part of our responsibility as this kind of backbone support infrastructure is to really uplift those force multipliers and make it, like, help them channel that motivation, direct it constructively, help them see how what they're doing is greater than the sum of its parts, like, because we get that bird's eye perspective. So we're constantly in communication with and supporting and uplifting those champions in the network. And one other just quick example I'll share about ways that we foster meaningful relationships is by, again, kind of cultivating space for meaningful groups. So we do have leaders, again, working together on topics like climate change, but we also have a parents group, which I'll just give you the quick story on that. During the webinar with Jacinda Ardern and Ben Rhodes, you know, she spoke about what was it like to be prime minister and, like, to give birth while being prime minister, while in office, right? And the kind of challenges and opportunities that came with being a mother as a head of state, right? And so during that conversation, some of our Obama leaders who were, like, also parents were like, wow, this is really meaningful to hear someone's journey like this. So we listened to that, and we picked up on the glimmer, right? It was kind of like, oh, there's a glimmer of activity here. The chat is flooding with people who are being really receptive to this idea. And there's a couple super users who we know are, like, really motivated to actually make this happen. So we followed up with them, and now this parents group is thriving, right? And it's one of the things that some of our new alum are most excited about, because just having people with similar life experiences or affinity groups, can really go a long way to feel connected within a broader global network.
A selfish question here, but is that something that as community builders, we like to create the category first and then see who will come? Is that something that you guys built first, or is that something that was by request of your users?
Yeah, it really came from the bottom up. I think, we've done a little bit of both, where we've identified priorities for President Obama, for the Obama Foundation, and, we are really excited to see how leaders are supporting democratic values when the world is in need of more democracy, for example. So some of it has come from us, but a lot of it has really come from listening to our users, and again, not dismissing the importance of those early glimmers of real, meaningful connection.
Beautiful, beautiful. My last question for you, honestly, we started with the why. What is your why, Nada? Why are you here, and why are you building community?
Yeah, thank you, Megan. So I'll give you a story in a second, but the first thing I want to reflect on with you is that I was in a conference last year with other amazing global community builders. We were in this retreat in the mountains of Spain. It was amazing, magical. And one of my big takeaways from that gathering was that many of us who are really passionate about and motivated to have careers in community have actually experienced the pain of loneliness. It was a really surprising takeaway, but it came up in our personal stories, at different points in life. Maybe it was in childhood, maybe it was during big life transitions. We know the pain of isolation, but we also know the power of belonging. And we have real personal lived experiences of those moments. So as a storyteller also, I coach public narrative and storytelling. I really encourage you to identify those moments for yourself and share them, because they're really rich sources of connection. So to answer your question through a quick moment, a quick story, as I've been practicing public narrative for many years, I kind of realized that there was a time, so many, many years ago, when I'm 6 years old, my family used to host gatherings with other families like us near Detroit, other Muslim and Egyptian American families. Every Friday, we'd come together for a potluck, and there would be all these activities for the kids. And there was always, and one Friday, it was my job to present. So I had actually just memorized my first page of scripture as a young Muslim, and I was asked to present it in front of this room of adults. And the thing is, I was a painfully shy kid. I'm now extremely comfortable speaking on stages, but literally when I was young, strangers thought I was mute sometimes because I was so just silent and observing, right? So imagine at this point, I had never been more terrified of anything in my young life, right? But I remember we were in the living room, I pulled up this big wooden chair in the middle of the room, pushed myself up, and my hair was in curly pigtails, and my little feet were in white dress shoes dangling, not yet touching the floor because I was so small. I was truly, truly terrified. But I took a deep breath, gave my little 2-minute presentation, and then the room erupted in applause. And I didn't know it back then, but now, looking back, I really think that was my first time experiencing the power of community, of really being in a warm, loving room of human beings who support you to find your voice and to be your best self. And so ever since, again, I think it's those moments and cultivating them that keep me going in this work. And I invite you to reflect on what those moments are for yourself and share them with others so that we can all continue this work for a long time to come. So.
As we close, Nada, that was beautiful. I really believe in giving gratitude and thanking any of our clients, our customers, for the work that they do, because I know it's a massive job to be a community manager. Similar to what you're sharing, I'm going to borrow from you. If we can just give a warm, warm, warm applause and gratitude to Nada for today, I would really love that. So thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.